I grew up in New Jersey, in a beautiful home in Princeton. But the thing about my childhood wasn't the house or the neighborhood. It was the way my parents treated each other, and the way they treated me. Before everything, if you're listening to this, I request you to please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon for more videos like this in the future. My father, Charles Morgan, was a quiet man. He wasn't the type of person who would walk into a room and demand attention. He was the type of person who already had everyone's attention the moment he appeared, because people could sense the competence radiating from him. He was the founder and CEO of Morgan Industries, a company that had grown from nothing into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise over the course of 30 years. But when he came home at 6 p.m., he became just my dad. I remember him coming through the front door, loosening his tie, and immediately asking my mother about her day. Not in a distracted way, not while checking his phone or reviewing documents. He would sit down, make eye contact, and actually listen while she told him about the book club meeting she'd attended or the rose garden she'd been working on. And my mother, Diane, was the heart of our home. She was warm and nurturing, but she wasn't passive. She had opinions. She had ideas. She had a presence that balanced my father's structured intensity. She had been a lawyer before she decided to focus on family and philanthropy, and she brought that same analytical mind to everything she did. What I remember most about my parents' relationship was the respect. They respected each other's ideas. They supported each other's goals. They made decisions together, even the big ones, and they made sure I understood that a partnership is built on equality, not dominance. "Victoria," my father said to me once when I was maybe 11 years old, "I want you to understand something. Your mother and I have built a life together, but that life is only possible because we both have a voice in it. If either of us had given up our voice, we would have given up part of ourselves. Never do that. Never be with someone who asks you to be smaller." I nodded, not fully understanding what he meant, but understanding that it was important. My childhood was in many ways privileged. We had a beautiful home, I went to excellent schools, I took piano lessons and attended prestigious summer camps, but my parents never let that wealth become our identity. "Money is a tool," my father would say. "It's not a measure of your worth. You could lose every dollar tomorrow, and you would still be valuable. You would still be enough. That's what I want you to understand." My mother reinforced this constantly. She was involved in multiple charities. She taught me about service and compassion. She showed me that having resources meant having responsibility to help others, to lift people up, to use what you had for good. I was an only child, and in some families that might have created a sense of entitlement, but my parents were intentional about preventing that. They made sure I understood the value of hard work. They made sure I understood that privilege came with obligations. When I was 16, I wanted a new car. My friends' parents were buying them BMWs and Mercedes for their 16th birthdays. I wanted one too. My father said no. "You can have a car," he told me, "but you're going to work for it. You can get a part-time job, earn money, and contribute to the purchase. That way, you'll understand what it took to earn it." I was furious at the time, but I got a job at a coffee shop near my school, and I saved for 8 months. When I finally bought my car, a used Honda that I had helped pay for, it meant something to me in a way that a gift never could have. That was my father's genius. He understood how to teach without being harsh, how to guide without controlling, how to raise a daughter who understood her own worth. My father died when I was 23 years old. It was unexpected and sudden, a heart attack while he was at the office, which seems almost unfair because my father was healthy. He exercised, he ate well, he managed stress, and yet at 58 years old, his heart simply stopped. I was in my junior year at Princeton University when I got the call. I remember the exact moment. I was sitting in the library studying for an economics exam when my mother called. Her voice was different. It was hollow in a way that I had never heard before. "Victoria," she said, "you need to come home. Something has happened." I knew immediately. I don't know how I knew, but I knew. The funeral was held a week later. It was massive. My father had touched many lives. business partners, employees, charitable organizations he had worked with, they all came to pay their respects. I remember standing at the front of the church, accepting condolences from people I didn't know, people who told me stories about my father that I had never heard before. One woman told me about a time when my father had personally helped her when she was struggling financially. He had given her a job and mentored her for years. Another man talked about how my father had paid for his daughter's medical school tuition as a gift, not a loan, a gift. I learned more about my father in those few days after his death than I had known in 23 years of living with him. I learned that he was even more generous, even more thoughtful, even more intentional than I had realized. My mother was devastated, but she was also strong. She held herself together for the funeral. She accepted the condolences with grace. She made arrangements for everything. But when we got home afterwards, when we were finally alone in the house, she broke down. I held her while she cried, and I realized that I had lost my father, but my mother had lost her partner, her best friend, the person who had shaped her entire adult life. A few days after the funeral, my mother called me into my father's office. It was exactly as he had left it, his desk organized, his leather chair still holding the impression of where he sat. On the desk was a folder with my name on it. "Your father wrote this," my mother said, her voice steady but with an undercurrent of emotion. "He wrote it years ago, but he made sure it was updated every year. He wanted me to give it to you when certain things happened. I think now is the time." I opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside was a letter from my father, dated just 3 weeks before his death. "My dearest Victoria, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry that I didn't get to see you graduate, didn't get to walk you down an aisle, didn't get to meet my grandchildren, or grow old with your mother." I had to stop reading to cry. When I composed myself, I continued. "But I want to tell you something important. I have built a company that is worth approximately $2.8 billion. When I die, the majority of that company will go to the corporation's board of directors and the employees who have helped build it. But a significant portion of it, approximately $1.2 billion in assets, is being held in a trust for you. You don't know this yet because I didn't want it to define your life or your choices. I wanted you to become who you are based on who you are, not based on what you might inherit. But now you know. This money comes with responsibility. I want you to understand that. It's not money for you to spend frivolously or to hide away. It's money that should be used to do good in the world. Use it to build something. Use it to help people. Use it to create opportunities for others the way I've tried to do."
I love you, Victoria, more than I could ever express in words. I'm proud of the woman you're becoming, and I'm confident that you'll do extraordinary things with whatever resources you have, whether it's this money or nothing at all. Be good to your mother, be honest with yourself, and never, ever compromise who you are for anyone else. Your father. I remember sitting in that office for hours, just holding the letter. My mother had known all along. She had known that I would one day inherit a vast fortune, and she had never let that change how she raised me. The next few years were complicated. I graduated from Princeton with a degree in business administration. I moved to Manhattan to work at Morgan Industries, not because I had to, but because I wanted to understand the company that my father had built. I wanted to honor his legacy by learning it, by understanding it, by making sure it continued to do good work in the world. My mother grieved, but she also started to build her own life. She became more involved in philanthropy. She started a foundation in my father's name, the Charles Morgan Foundation, dedicated to helping young entrepreneurs, particularly those from underrepresented communities, build businesses and create wealth. And I worked. I learned the business from the ground up. I started in the operations department, not in an executive role. I wanted to understand how the company actually functioned, not just how to manage it from above. It was during this time that I met Marcus. I met Marcus at a charity gala in Manhattan. My mother had dragged me to it. She was on the board of several charitable organizations, and she wanted me to be more involved in giving back to the community. I was 24 years old, relatively focused on my career, and not particularly interested in the dating scene. But then I saw Marcus across the room. He was beautiful in the way that some men are, tall with warm brown skin and a smile that seemed to light up his entire face. He was wearing an expensive suit, and he moved through the room with a kind of confidence that suggested he was used to being the most important person in every space he occupied. He approached me during dinner. "I'm Marcus Wellington," he said, extending his hand. "I don't think we've met." His handshake was firm. His eye contact was intense. Everything about him suggested sincerity. "Victoria Morgan," I said. I watched as something shifted in his expression, just for a moment, barely perceptible. It was the look of someone recognizing a name they'd heard before. "Morgan Industries," he said. "Your father's company?" "My father passed away a few years ago," I said carefully, "but yes, his company." "I'm sorry," he said, and he said it in a way that seemed genuine. That must have been hard. He was attentive throughout dinner. He asked about myself. He seemed genuinely interested in my work, my goals, my life. He told me about himself. He said he was in venture capital, that he came from money but wanted to make his own way in the world, that he was passionate about innovation and building new companies. He was charming. He was funny. He was intelligent. He was everything I thought I was looking for. We started dating that night, in the sense that he asked for my number and actually called me the next day. In my experience, that was already exceptional. Marcus and I dated for 6 months before he asked me to be my girlfriend officially. I know that sounds old-fashioned. We were already spending most of our time together, already intimate, but he was very traditional about these things. He said, "I want to do this right. I want to court you properly." Looking back, I can see the manipulation in that statement. He was positioning himself as respectful, as old-fashioned, as someone who cared about propriety and proper forms. But at the time, it felt romantic. He was attentive in ways that seemed meaningful. He would send me flowers at my office. He would surprise me with dinner reservations at restaurants that required months of advance booking. He remembered small details about my life and referenced them in conversations. He also was very interested in learning about my life. He asked a lot of questions. Where did I go to school? Who were my friends? What did my father do before he founded his company? What was my mother's family background? At the time, I thought he was just interested. I didn't understand that he was gathering information. I didn't understand that he was assessing me, not as a person he loved, but as an asset. We met his family about a year of dating. His parents were wealthy. His father, Richard Wellington, was a real estate mogul who had built a considerable fortune in the 1980s and 1990s. His mother, Sanda, was a former model who had become a socialite and philanthropist. They were a lot. His father was boisterous and domineering. He made jokes about women in business. He made assumptions about my competence based on my gender. But the most concerning thing was the way he spoke about money, like it was the only thing that mattered, like everything could be reduced to a financial transaction. His mother was cold. She smiled, but her eyes never warmed. She asked pointed questions about my family, about my education, about my career. She seemed to be calculating something about me, the way you might evaluate a piece of art to determine its market value. "So your father left you the company?" she asked, at one point. "He left me a trust," I corrected. "The company is managed by a board of directors." "But you have considerable assets," she said. It wasn't a question. "I do," I said carefully, "but I prefer not to discuss the details of my inheritance." She smiled thinly and moved on to other topics. Afterwards, Marcus assured me that his parents were just intense, that they didn't mean anything by it, that they came from a different generation and had different values. "My mother's just protective of me, that's all." I believed him, or maybe I wanted to believe him. Maybe I was already starting to overlook the things that should have concerned me because I was falling in love with the version of Marcus that he presented to me. About 18 months into dating, Marcus proposed. We were in Paris at a restaurant overlooking the Seine. The ring was large and expensive, a 3-carat diamond on a platinum band. He got down on one knee. He told me that he was the love of my life. I said yes. I was so happy. I called my mother immediately. She cried, happy tears, or so I thought. She told me she was thrilled for me. But later, when we were alone, she said something that I didn't fully understand at the time. She said, "Victoria, I'm glad you're happy, but I want you to promise me something. Promise me that if anything ever feels wrong, you'll tell me. Promise me that your happiness matters more than any pride or any wedding." I was confused by her concern. "Mom, everything is fine. Marcus is wonderful." She said, "I know. I hope he continues to be, but promise me anyway." I promised, thinking she was just being protective, a mother's natural concern for her child. I didn't know that she had already started noticing things about Marcus that concerned her. I didn't know that she had hired a private investigator to look into his background. I didn't know that she was seeing patterns in his behavior that I was still too blinded by love to see. The wedding planning was a process. Marcus had opinions about everything. He wanted the venue to be impressive. He wanted the guest list to be curated to show off his status and connections. He wanted everything to be expensive and visible and demonstrate wealth. My mother wanted a smaller, more intimate wedding. She suggested a garden setting, something romantic and personal.
Marcus was dismissive of that idea. "This is our announcement to the world," he said. "We need something that makes a statement." I was caught in the middle, trying to please both of them, trying to create a wedding that honored my relationship while also meeting everyone's expectations. I didn't realize at the time that this was the pattern that would become my life. Always negotiating, always compromising, always trying to keep the peace between the people I loved and the man I had chosen to marry. We booked a venue at the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan. We planned a wedding with 200 guests. It was going to be elaborate and expensive and beautiful. And then, about 3 months before the wedding, something happened that changed everything. It was a Sunday morning. Marcus and I were having brunch at a restaurant in the Upper East Side. We were sitting outside, enjoying mimosas and discussing the wedding details, specifically the seating arrangement for dinner, which Marcus had opinions about. And then he stood up abruptly. I remember being confused for a moment, and then I saw why. Across the restaurant, at another table, was a woman. She was beautiful. Objectively, she was very beautiful. She had long, dark hair and a curvature figure and the kind of confidence that suggests she's never doubted her own attractiveness. And Marcus stared at her like he'd forgotten I existed. I watched as his expression changed. It was like watching a light switch flip. The attentive, loving fiancé vanished, and in his place was someone else entirely, someone who was assessing, comparing, measuring. The woman noticed his stare. She gave him a small smile, a flirtatious smile, and then went back to her brunch companion. Marcus sat back down, and he didn't look at me. He picked up his drink and took a long sip. "Who is that?" I asked quietly. "Nobody," he said. "Someone I used to know." But the way he said it, the casualness that didn't match the intensity in his eyes, told me that was a lie. "Marcus, you're staring at her." "I'm not," he said, but even as he said it, I watched him glance at her again. "I'm just surprised to see her, that's all." We finished brunch in uncomfortable silence. He was distracted. His phone buzzed several times, and I noticed him checking it. His expression changed slightly each time he looked at it, like he was receiving a message and trying to hide his reaction. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. I didn't want to think that my fiancé, the man I was planning to marry, was suddenly interested in someone else. But I could feel the shift. I could feel something fundamental changing between us. Over the next few weeks, things continued to shift. Marcus became less attentive. He stayed out later, citing work events that I couldn't verify. He was on his phone more, and he seemed to always be positioning the screen away from me. He started criticizing me in small ways. The way I dressed wasn't sophisticated enough. The way I wore my hair made me look older. My laugh was too loud. My personality was too dominant in social situations. "You're intimidating people," he said one night after a dinner party at our apartment. "The way you talk about your work, it makes people feel small. You should tone it down." I was shocked. I had always been myself around people. I had never been told that being myself was a problem. "I'm just being me," I said. "I know," he said, "and that's the issue. You need to be more demure, more feminine, less aggressive." I tried to adjust. I tried to make myself smaller. I stopped talking about my work as much. I started deferring to his opinions more in social situations. I wore different clothes, softer clothes, more traditionally feminine clothes. And the more I adjusted, the more he became distant. It was like chasing someone who kept moving away. The faster I ran to catch him, the farther he went. It was my best friend, Alicia, who told me. She had seen Marcus with the woman from the restaurant more than once. She had seen them at a hotel. She had seen them kissing. I remember when she told me. We were in my apartment and I had just made tea, and she looked at me with this expression of deep compassion mixed with concern, and she said, "Victoria, I need to tell you something, and I know you're not going to want to hear it, but I have to tell you anyway because I love you." And my entire body went cold. When she told me what she'd seen, I didn't cry immediately. I think I was in shock. I kept saying no, that she must have been mistaken, that it couldn't be right. But I knew deep down that she wasn't lying. I had already suspected it in that part of me that I had been trying to ignore. Marcus was cheating on me. My fiancé, the man I was planning to marry in 3 months, was having an affair. That night, I waited for him to come home. We were living together at this point. We had a beautiful apartment in Tribeca that he had found, that he had insisted on, that he had decorated to his taste. When he came home, I confronted him. "I know about the woman," I said. "I know you're seeing her." He didn't deny it. He looked almost relieved, like he had been waiting for this moment. "It's not what you think," he said. "It's pretty straightforward," I said, my voice shaking. "You're cheating on me, or you have been. I don't even know anymore." "Victoria, listen," he said. He sat down on the couch and looked at me with an expression that was almost sympathetic, which made it worse. "Victoria, you're a wonderful woman. You're successful, you're intelligent, you're kind, but you're not what I need right now." I felt like he had physically struck me. "What do you mean?" I asked, even though I was afraid I already knew. He meant that woman, her name is Jasmine, she's beautiful in a way that you're not. She makes me feel alive in a way that you don't. When I'm with her, I feel like I'm with someone who's actually worthy of me. The casual cruelty of that statement took my breath away. "So what are you saying?" I asked. He said, "I'm saying," he said slowly, like he was explaining something simple to a child, "that I'm canceling the wedding. I don't want to marry you. I want to be with Jasmine." I sat down. My legs gave out. I had expected him to deny it, to fight, to try to convince me to work through it. I had not expected him to simply tell me that he was leaving me, that he didn't want to marry me, that I wasn't good enough. "Victoria," he said, and there was something almost kind in his voice, which made it worse. "I know this is painful, but it's better that we figure this out now than after we're married. You deserve to be with someone who really wants you." The hypocrisy of that statement after months of manipulating me, of making me smaller, of criticizing me was almost too much. "Get out," I said. "What?" "Get out. I want you to leave, now." He packed a bag that night. As he was leaving, he said, "I'm sorry it has to be this way. I do care about you, you know. I just needed something more." I didn't respond. I just watched him leave. And then I called my mother. When my mother arrived at my apartment, I was a complete mess. I was sitting on the couch, surrounded by tissues, unable to stop crying. She held me without asking questions, just letting me fall apart. Once I had calmed down enough to talk, I told her everything. I told her about Marcus's infidelity, about his cruel comments, about the way he had been changing me, criticizing me, making me doubt myself. And my mother listened, and her expression grew darker with each detail. When I finished, she said, "Victoria, I need to tell you something. I had someone investigate Marcus. After you got engaged, I had a private investigator look into his background. I had a feeling something wasn't right. Mom, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were happy," she said, "and I wasn't certain of anything. I just had concerns. But what I found was troubling." She explained that Marcus had a history, not with one woman, with many women. There was a pattern of him dating women, love-bombing them, making them feel special, and then discarding them when someone better came along. She had found at least 4 women who reported similar experiences. And there was something else. His family's finances aren't what they appear to be, my mother said, carefully. Richard Wellington made his money in real estate in the 1980s, but over the past few years, the market has shifted. Their holdings have lost significant value. They're actually drowning in debt. It's just well hidden because they maintain a facade of wealth. I felt something click into place in my mind. All of Marcus's questions about my family, about my inheritance, about my assets, all of his interest in knowing exactly how much money I had. "Oh my God," I said, "he was marrying me for my money." "I believe so," my mother said quietly. "I believe he targeted you specifically because of who you are, because of what you have. And when he met that woman, Jasmine, he probably thought she was richer or more beautiful or a better match in some way. But I suspect he was already testing to see if he could access your assets through the marriage." I felt sick. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me, like everything I had believed about my relationship was a lie. And the worst part was knowing that my mother had suspected this all along, and I hadn't believed her. I had been so convinced that I knew Marcus, that I knew his heart, that I could trust him. The next morning, still running on very little sleep, I had to start making phone calls. I had to cancel the wedding. I had to call the venue, the caterer, the florist, the photographer, the band. I had to email 200 guests and tell them that the wedding was off. It was humiliating. I had to take time off work because the emotional toll was simply too much to manage while also doing my job. And people had questions. My friends wanted to know what had happened. My colleagues wanted to know if I was okay. My mother's friends who had been invited to the wedding wanted to know why. I told most people that things had changed and we had decided not to go through with it. I didn't tell them about the infidelity or the emotional manipulation or the fact that my fiancé had apparently been interested in me primarily as a financial acquisition. I only told a select few people the truth. A few days after Marcus left, I started to realize that there were financial complications. Marcus had accessed some of my accounts. He had used my credit cards. He had made purchases on accounts we had opened together. I contacted my lawyer, and we started sorting through the financial mess that he had created. It wasn't just infidelity. It was also financial irresponsibility, unauthorized charges, and what bordered on fraud. It took months to unravel. It took legal documents and meetings with financial advisors and careful auditing of accounts. But eventually, we managed to separate our finances and limit the damage. The whole experience was deeply traumatizing. I had been manipulated, I had been used, I had almost married someone whose primary interest in me was my money. and I was too blind to see it. During this time, something unexpected happened. My mother, with my permission, reached out to the other women who had similar experiences with Marcus. She connected them with each other and with lawyers, and together they decided to pursue legal action. I didn't think I could do it. The idea of being part of a lawsuit against Marcus, of having my story become public, of having my humiliation aired in court, it seemed unbearable. But my mother said something to me that changed my perspective. Victoria, this man hurt you. He hurt multiple women, and he did it in a calculated way, with intent. If you don't do this, if you don't speak up, he's going to continue to hurt people, and that's on you as much as it is on him. It was harsh, but it was also true. So I decided to pursue the lawsuit, not for revenge, not for money, I didn't need his money, but for principle of the thing, because what he did was wrong, and I needed to stand up and say that clearly. The lawsuit took months to work through. Discovery revealed even more troubling information about Marcus's patterns. There were emails where he discussed women with his friends in crude and demeaning terms. There were financial records showing that he had tried to access his girlfriend's trust funds through various manipulative means. The judge ultimately ruled in favor of the women. Marcus was required to pay restitution to each of us, and there were criminal charges filed related to fraud and financial crimes. But the real vindication wasn't the money. It was the simple fact of being believed. It was having a court of law state, officially, that what he did was wrong. However, there was an unexpected consequence. During the lawsuit discovery process, financial records had been exposed. Marcus's family's financial situation had been documented. The world now knew that Richard Wellington was not nearly as wealthy as he had claimed, that the Wellington family was actually in significant financial distress, and I had the power to help them. 6 months after Marcus left me, I received a call from his father, Richard Wellington. I almost didn't take it, but something made me answer. "Victoria," he said, his voice tight and controlled, "I wonder if we could meet. I'd like to discuss something." "I don't think there's anything you and I need to discuss," I said carefully. "Please," he said, and there was genuine desperation in his voice. "Just coffee, that's all I'm asking." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop near my office the next day. Richard Wellington looked like a man who had aged 10 years in the past 6 months. He was thinner, grayer, more worn down. The bravado that he had displayed when I had met him at his home was completely gone. "I know what you're thinking," he started, before I could even sit down. "You're thinking that I have no right to ask you for anything, and you're right, but I'm asking anyway." "Why?" I asked, sitting down across from him. "Because my son has destroyed our family," he said bluntly. "Because of his actions, because of the lawsuit, because of the public record of what he did, it's all become public knowledge. Our business partners are pulling out, our investors are leaving. We're bankrupt, literally bankrupt. We're going to lose everything." I felt a strange mix of emotions listening to this. Part of me wanted to feel satisfied that there was justice, that he was experiencing consequences for raising a son who would manipulate and cheat and defraud women. But another part of me felt nothing, just emptiness. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "I want you to buy our company," he said. "I want you to acquire Wellington Holdings. I know you have the resources. I know you have the capital. And I know you have the business acumen. You could save us." I stared at him. "You're asking me to use my money to save the family of the man who tried to manipulate me into marriage so he could access my assets?" "I'm asking you to be merciful," he said. I'm asking you to do something kind." I considered this. I considered what my father would have done. My father, who had been generous with his wealth, who had helped people, who believed that having resources meant having responsibility. And then I made a decision. "I'll buy Wellington Holdings," I said, "but on one condition." "Name it," Richard said immediately. "Marcus is not part of this. He has nothing to do with the company going forward. You will step back from day-to-day operations. I will bring in a professional management team, and you will receive a salary, a generous one, but you will have no control over the company's direction." Richard's face crumpled. I realized he was about to cry. "And one more thing," I said. "Your son needs to get help, real help, professional help. He needs to understand why he does what he does, and he needs to change. I'm not doing this to rescue him. I'm doing this because I believe in second chances, and I believe in giving people the resources to become better. But that's only possible if he actually wants to change." "He will," Richard said, and I could hear in his voice that he meant it. I acquired Wellington Holdings through my trust funds and some borrowed capital. The acquisition was strategic. The company had good assets that had just been mismanaged. With proper leadership and proper capital infusion, it could be profitable again. But it was also symbolic. I was taking the company that had been built by the family of the man who had tried to use me, and I was saving it. Not for him, but because I could, and because I believed it was the right thing to do. A year after the wedding was supposed to happen, I was running both Morgan Industries and Wellington Holdings. My mother had suggested I step back from day-to-day operations at Morgan and focus on strategic direction, which allowed me to focus more energy on turning Wellington Holdings around. It was during this time that I met Daniel. I didn't meet Daniel at a charity gala. I met him at a business meeting. He was a management consultant who had been hired to help streamline operations at Wellington Holdings. He was brilliant and analytical, and had a dry sense of humor that made me laugh at the most inappropriate moments in conference rooms. He was also completely unimpressed by my wealth or my family name. "The Morgan name is a liability here," he said at one of our first meetings. "People defer to you because of who your father was, not because of who you are. If you want this company to succeed, you need to earn the respect of your employees. You need to prove that you can make good decisions, not just inherit them." I was initially offended, but he was right. Over the next few months, as we worked together, I got to know Daniel. He was the son of a teacher and an accountant. He had put himself through college. He had built his career on merit, not connections. He had no trust fund, no family wealth, no safety net, and he didn't care about mine. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings, he asked me to get dinner with him. "This isn't a business dinner. This is me asking you on a date, and I need you to know that I'm not interested in your money or your name or your family. I'm interested in you, and if that's not enough, if you need someone who's impressed by those other things, then we don't have anything to talk about." I appreciated the clarity. I appreciated that he was being honest about his intentions. I said yes. Dating Daniel was completely different from dating Marcus. There were no grand romantic gestures, there were no constant compliments or love bombing. Instead, there was consistency, there was respect, there was genuine interest in who I was as a person. He asked me about my dreams, he asked me about my fears. He asked me about my grief over my father and my concerns about my responsibilities. He listened without trying to fix things, without trying to control me or shape me into someone I wasn't. And he held me accountable. When I started to make a decision that was based on fear or insecurity rather than sound judgment, he called me out. When I tried to diminish myself or make myself smaller to please him, he stopped me and reminded me of my own competence. "You're brilliant," he said, when I was second-guessing a business decision I had made. "Trust yourself. You don't need my approval or anyone else's. You need your own." 6 months into dating, he told me he loved me. He said it in a completely normal moment while we were doing dishes. No staging, no drama, no performance. He said, "I love you, and I want to keep doing this, normal, everyday things with you for a very long time." I told him I loved him too, and I meant it in a way that I had never meant it with Marcus. A year into our relationship, Daniel proposed. He did it while we were hiking in the mountains of Vermont. There was no ring yet. He said we could pick one out together if I said yes. There were no elaborate plans or orchestrations. He just asked me on a hiking trail with his backpack and a water bottle, "Will you marry me?" Not because I need you to, not because of anything you have or what you bring to the table, but because I want to build a life with you. Just you. I said yes, and this time I knew I was making the right choice. About a month before my wedding to Daniel, I received a letter. It was from Marcus. I was afraid to open it, but I did. In the letter, Marcus apologized. He wrote about the therapy he had been doing, about understanding the patterns in his behavior, about recognizing that he had been using women and that his self-worth had been entirely tied to how attractive or impressive his girlfriends were. He wrote, "Victoria, I treated you with a cruelty that you didn't deserve. I targeted you specifically because of what you have, and when I thought I found something better, I discarded you without regard for your feelings. You were right to pursue the lawsuit. You were right to hold me accountable, and I'm grateful that you did, because it forced me to actually look at myself and what I was doing." He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't ask for anything. He just said he wanted me to know that he was sorry, that he was working on himself, and that he hoped I would be happy.
I cried when I read it. Not because I had forgiven him, I had already done that, for my own sake, so that I could let go of the anger and hurt, but because I recognized that he was actually doing the work to change. He was taking responsibility for his actions in a real way, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness toward him exactly, but a kind of resolution. I could move forward now, without carrying the weight of what had happened. My wedding to Daniel was everything that my wedding to Marcus wasn't. It was intimate, only close family and friends. It was held in my mother's garden, in the home where I had grown up. It was simple and beautiful and deeply personal. My mother cried during the ceremony. She cried because she was happy, but also because she was thinking about my father, about how much he would have loved Daniel, about how he would have been proud that I had found someone who respected me and valued me for who I actually was. During the reception, Daniel gave a speech. He talked about meeting me and being completely unprepared for how smart and capable and kind I was. He talked about watching me take over 2 massive companies and run them with integrity and vision. He talked about loving me not in spite of my strength, but because of it. "Victoria," he said, looking directly at me, "you don't need me to take care of you. You don't need me to protect you or advise you or make decisions for you. You need me to be your partner, and that's what I'm going to be. Not someone who diminishes you, but someone who stands beside you. I love you for exactly who you are." I cried. Happy tears, but also tears of release. Tears of finally being with someone who saw me clearly and valued me completely. 2 years after my marriage to Daniel, I made a significant decision regarding Wellington Holdings. The company was thriving. I had brought in excellent management. I had divested from the projects that were failing and invested in new innovation. The company had become profitable and was actually doing meaningful work in the real estate industry. And I decided to sell it, not at a loss and not to make a quick profit, but to the management team that I had brought in. I offered them a deal where they could buy the company gradually, with me holding a minority stake and a seat on the board. When people asked why, I explained, I acquired this company out of a sense of responsibility to give people a second chance. But I've realized that true responsibility means not holding on to things just because I can afford to. It means creating opportunities for other people to lead, to build, to own their own success.
It was a lesson that my father had taught me implicitly and that I had finally learned explicitly. Wealth is only meaningful if it's used to empower other people, not to control them or to keep them dependent. With the capital from the sale of Wellington Holdings and with additional resources from my trust fund, I launched my own foundation, the Victoria Morgan Foundation for Gender Equity in Business. The foundation focuses on two things: providing funding for women entrepreneurs and providing education and resources for men to understand how gender bias works and how to actively work against it. We can't change the world by only helping women. We have to also reach the men who are creating the inequities in the first place. We have to help them understand why their behavior is harmful, and we have to show them what respect actually looks like. The foundation has grown significantly. I've been able to help hundreds of women start and scale their businesses, and I've been able to reach thousands of men through our educational programs. It's meaningful work. It's work that my father would have been proud of. I'm 29 years old now. I run Morgan Industries. I serve on the board of Wellington Holdings. I run my foundation. I'm married to a man who respects me and challenges me and loves me for who I am. And I think often about Marcus and about the lessons that experience taught me. I learned that love can be used as a weapon. I learned that charisma and charm are not the same as integrity. I learned that people can hide their true intentions behind attractive facades. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I learned that I could survive betrayal and come out the other side. I learned that I could stand up for myself and for other women. And most importantly, I learned that my worth is not determined by whether someone else values me. My worth is inherent. It comes from who I am, what I believe in, and how I treat people. Money doesn't change that. Beauty doesn't change that. Love, even betrayal in the name of love, doesn't change that. People sometimes ask me if I regret the experience with Marcus, if I wish I could go back and prevent it. I don't. I mean, yes, I wish he had treated me better. I wish I had recognized the signs earlier. I wish I had listened to my mother's concerns. But the experience made me who I am. It made me understand the importance of accountability, of standing up for what's right, of using my resources to help people. It made me appreciate what real love looks like. If Marcus hadn't betrayed me, I might still be in that relationship, diminishing myself, compromising my values, living a lie. Instead, I'm free. I'm happy. I'm doing work that matters. And I'm with someone who loves me not despite my strength, but because of it. That's a gift that I wouldn't trade for anything. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've experienced something similar, if someone made you question your worth, if someone manipulated you into believing that you needed to be smaller to be loved, I want you to know that's not love. Love doesn't diminish you. Love doesn't make you question yourself. Love respects you, values you, and makes you bigger, not smaller. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not for what you have, not for how you look, not for who you're related to, just for you. That's the most important thing I have to say. Thank you for listening.